Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today, well, it's pretty straightforward. We want to help you win the most important game, the game of your life, really. But here's the interesting part. We're going to explore how you might win it before the competition even kicks off.
Yeah, it's a fascinating idea, and it clicks when you hear a real story. Think
Sure.
back to 1968, the first ever Sunday Times solo sailboat race around the world. Huge deal.
Right, promising immense adventure, fame, glory, the whole package.
Exactly, and the assumption naturally was that the winner would be the ultimate tactician.
Yeah.
The sailor who could navigate perfectly, react fastest to the wind shifts, just impeccable seamanship.
But that's not quite how it played out, was it? The winner, Robin Knox Johnston, he didn't necessarily win because his moment-to-moment sailing tactics were leagues better than everyone else's.
No, he won because he grasped something deeper. He understood that fundamentally the game is won before it begins.
Okay, so unpack that. What does that mean in his context?
Well, while his competitors were maybe hyper-focused on the how to sail this particular leg faster, how to manage the current weather, Knox Johnston was thinking about the what and the why. His whole approach, his strategy, was built around things like radical self-reliance, minimizing the chance of catastrophic failure.
So decisions made way before setting sail, like choosing the right boat.
Precisely. His choice of boat, his philosophy about maintenance on board, his overall approach to risk, those strategic choices, made long before he even left the dock, were what ultimately secured the win.
And that core distinction strategy, which is about which game to play, the underlying philosophy versus tactics, which is how you execute within the game, the skill you apply in the moment, that's really the blueprint our sources suggest for, well, building a more meaningful life.
Absolutely. And if there's just one takeaway message from this whole deep dive today, it's really this. Tactics that are just good enough when they're serving a really sound strategy will beat brilliant world-class tactics that are stuck supporting a flawed strategy every single time.
Okay, so that leads to the obvious question then. If strategy is that powerful, if it can basically predetermine the outcome, why are we so obsessed with tactics? Why do we spend all our energy trying harder within the game instead of stepping back and working on the game itself?
Well, I think it's because our society fundamentally rewards tactics. It
Mhm.
trains us for them right from childhood, doesn't it?
Yeah, you learn how to study for the test, how to write the essay, how to perform in the interview.
Exactly. We're almost engineered to become phenomenal tacticians. We master the how to study, how to interview, how to climb the ladder, how to navigate the tricky social stuff in any organization. We become virtuosos of execution.
Mm-hmm. We pour decades into mastering the immediate mechanics, the how, but we often stay complete novices, sometimes well into our careers, when it comes to the why or even which game we should be playing in the first place.
And this is what some of our sources call, quite starkly, the peculiar modern tragedy. You see incredibly smart, capable people dedicating years, decades even, perfecting their tactical performance
Right.
in professional arenas, personal lives, games they maybe never consciously chose to be in, or, even worse, games they don't actually deep down care about winning.
I definitely see that in the workplace. Someone will spend, say, 15 hours polishing a presentation, amazing graphics, deep analysis, brilliant tactics, right?
Sure.
But how often do they pause and ask the strategic question? Like, does this project actually move the needle on the company's big goals? Or even more personally, does grinding on this align with where I want my career to go?
Exactly. Strategy feels, well, it feels abstract, maybe a bit fuzzy, distant, maybe even like a luxury we don't have time for, so we skip it.
Yeah. Well, tactics feel urgent. They're concrete. They feel absolutely necessary right now.
Right. When your inbox is overflowing, you're not typically leaning back to ponder your life philosophy, are you? You're diving headfirst into the tactics.
Mhm.
What's the quickest way to clear these emails? That sense of urgency, it's almost addictive.
But that tactical addiction, as our sources point out, it doesn't save you if the underlying strategy is just broken. Think about that Rhone-class sailor again.
They could execute perfectly, trimming the sails just right, reacting to every tiny wave. But if their initial strategy led them to pick a boat that's fundamentally flawed, one that's bound to leak or break apart,
Then all that tactical brilliance is just, well, delaying the inevitable sinking. It doesn't change the outcome.
and that brings us back to Knox Johnston's genius.
Yes. While others were maybe obsessing over the immediate weather forecast, he was thinking strategically about the vessel itself. He chose a sturdy steel hull. That was a conscious decision, knowing others were opting for faster, maybe lighter, wooden boats.
So they were focused on speed, a tactical element.
Right. While he was focused on durability, on a philosophy of maintenance that he could actually execute alone at sea for months. That strategy, that pre-planning, that thinking before the race, arguably set the stage for his victory long before the day-to-day tactics even mattered. Okay, so if tactics thrive on that constant urgency, that reaction mode, then strategy clearly needs something else. It needs distance, patience. And this is where one of the most powerful lines from our sources comes in, surprisingly, from Anne Frank, Writing and Hiding. She wrote, "Paper is more patient than people."
That's such a profound insight for strategic thinking, isn't it? People, we tend to demand answers now. We want quick reactions. We operate in that immediate, often emotional, urgent space.
That's the realm of tactics, pure and simple, quick moves, immediate responses.
But strategic clarity, that deeper understanding, it just can't flourish under constant pressure. It needs breathing room. And think about it. When you write down a thought, a frustration, maybe a big ambition, the paper just holds it.
It doesn't demand an instant solution or a perfectly optimized plan right away.
Exactly. A journal waits. So that act of written reflection, our sources suggest, it creates this essential strategic space. It provides a bit of friction against the constant digital pinging for immediate reaction. It allows real clarity to surface over time.
You have to remember, as one source put it, you can't really see the whole system clearly while you're drowning in the day-to-day details.
Yeah, when you're just swamped by tactical fires, the notifications, the urgent demands, the deadlines piling up, you're just too close. You can't see the bigger picture.
Which naturally leads to the next ingredient for strategy: quietness. Meister Eckhart had that beautiful line, "To the quiet mind, all things are possible."
And in a world that seems almost designed to bombard us with noise, with constant crises, big and small, finding ways to cultivate stillness isn't just some nice-to-have self-care luxury.
No, it's actually a profound strategic advantage.
Absolutely. The tactical mind, it tends to see only the next immediate step on a path that's already laid out. But the quiet strategic mind, it can start to perceive entirely new paths, possibilities that are completely invisible when you're just stuck in that reactive tactical overwhelm.
That stillness gives you the psychological distance needed for what our sources call that brutal honesty, the kind you need for real strategic assessment.
Right, the willingness to maybe admit, hang on, maybe I'm sailing the wrong boat entirely here.
Okay, let's pivot a bit. We've talked about external space, the quiet, the patient paper. Now let's look inward at the internal space. Specifically, how we choose to interpret what happens to us. This feels like strategy, moving from choosing the boat to choosing what the waves hitting the boat actually mean.
Yes, this is the strategy of perception or interpretation, and it's arguably the most powerful form because ultimately it's the one thing that's almost entirely within your control. Marcus Aurelius nailed this centuries ago. He said something like, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been."
Okay, hold on. That sounds a little bit like just denying reality, doesn't it? Or maybe what people nowadays call toxic positivity. I mean, if a massive storm hits my boat, metaphorically or literally, or I lose my job, how can just choosing not to feel harmed be a strategy? Isn't that just ignoring a very real problem?
That's a really important challenge. And the distinction is critical. Aurelius isn't saying, pretend the storm didn't happen or pretend you still have your job. He's not suggesting denying the facts of the event.
Okay.
He's talking about the strategic choice you make, about the meaning you assign to that event. You choose whether that event signifies an unrecoverable disaster, the end of the world, or whether it signifies a change in circumstances, maybe a difficult one, that requires adaptation and a new approach.
Ah, I see. So the interpretation, the meaning we layer onto the fact, that's the strategic choice. And that choice then dictates all the tactical actions that follow.
Precisely. The event itself is often neutral, or at least its long-term significance isn't fixed until we assign it one. We saw this play out so starkly, collectively, during the pandemic, particularly with parents.
Right. The external situation, remote schooling, isolation, massive disruption, was broadly similar for millions.
Yes, but the internal strategic interpretation of that situation varied wildly. Some parents, strategically, interpreted the disruption primarily as permanent harm being done to their kids.
Which then likely led to tactics rooted in victimhood, maybe paralysis, anger, frustration.
Exactly. While other families, facing the same external pressures, strategically chose to interpret it differently. Maybe it's an incredibly stressful, yes, but ultimately an opportunity for adaptation, for building resilience, for finding new ways to connect.
Same event, different strategic interpretations leading to vastly different outcomes, victims versus perhaps survivors or adapters.
The event was the constant. The interpretation was the strategic variable.
Wow. Okay, now this is where it gets really deep, connecting that personal agency, that choice of interpretation, with a broader philosophical view. Nisargadatta Maharaj offers this really mind-bending paradox. Love tells me I'm everything, wisdom tells me I'm nothing. Between the two, my life unfolds. How does that relate to strategy for us everyday folks?
Yeah. How do we find our agency in that huge space between being everything and being nothing when we're just trying to meet deadlines and manage family life?
Well, the strategic insight here seems to be about holding both truths at the same time. Wisdom reminds us of our real-world limitations, right? We can't control the global economy. We can't control the weather in that sense, relative to the universe. I'm nothing.
Okay.
But love may be interpreted here as our internal drive, our values, our capacity to act reminds us that we can choose how we respond within those limitations.
Yeah.
We can choose our actions, our interpretations. In that sphere of choice, I am everything.
So the space between the uncontrollable external nothing and our chosen internal response, everything, that's where strategic agency actually lives.
Exactly. You're not ultimately defined by the external event, the wave hitting the boat, but by your deliberate chosen response to it, your interpretation strategy.
Okay, so maintaining that internal strategy, that power of interpretation, it clearly requires effort. And our sources kept coming back to one core practice: honest conversations with ourselves.
Yeah, that phrase popped up again and again. It seems to be the engine driving strategic clarity. It means really looking at the strategy itself. Am I even working on the right things? Not just getting lost in the tactics. Am I working hard enough? Am I efficient enough?
And often, we reveal our true strategy, or maybe the lack of one, unconsciously through how we react to other people. There's that potent Spanish proverb, lo que Juan dice de Pedro, dice más de Juan de que Pedro.
What Juan says about Pedro says more about Juan than about Pedro. Okay, how does that fit strategically?
It means that every time we criticize someone, every judgment we make, every complaint we voice about others, it's actually a kind of strategic confession.
A confession? How so?
It reveals what we truly value, what we fear, what our own internal life strategy is constantly trying to optimize for or protect against. So if you find yourself constantly criticizing someone for, say, their lack of ambition,
You're basically confessing that your own internal strategy heavily prioritizes achievement, maybe above other things.
precisely, your judgment outs your own strategy.
That kind of honesty, looking at our criticisms that way, it's tough because I think most of us, if we're really honest, have this huge gap between the strategy we say we have and the one our daily actions actually serve.
Oh, absolutely. It's a massive strategic disconnect. We preach one thing, our stated values, perhaps, but our everyday tactics, our habits, often serve a completely different, maybe unacknowledged strategy.
I have to admit, I talk a good game about work-life balance, but my tactical habits, checking email late, always being available, they actually serve a strategy of maximizing professional output, maybe at the expense of that balance. That disconnect is a strategic failure, isn't it?
It's incredibly common. We talk about family time while scrolling through work messages at the dinner table. We preach the strategy of being present, but we practice the tactics of constant digital availability. And that's why the next insight is so crucial. An ounce of practice is worth more than tons of preaching.
The strategy only becomes real, only has power when the tactics, the daily actions consistently line up to support it, even in small ways.
Right, so what's the practical takeaway
Yeah.
there? How do you bridge that gap? Seth Godin has this great insight. Big systemic problems, like a major disconnect between your stated values and your actions, often demand small solutions.
So the strategic question isn't, how do I totally revolutionize my entire life overnight?
No, it's more like, what is the smallest consistent tactical habit, that ounce of practice that I can realistically implement today that starts nudging me towards the strategy I actually want?
Like maybe putting the phone away for just 30 minutes during dinner
Yep, well,
consistently.
Exactly. That small strategic practice, done consistently, is what starts to create the larger systemic shift over time. Now let's connect this to perseverance. Thomas Buxton said something powerful about the tactic of grit. With ordinary talent and extraordinary perseverance, all things are attainable. And perseverance is vital, no doubt.
Sure, grit gets things done, but the immediate strategic question that must follow is, attainable for what purpose?
Right. Perseverance is a fantastic tactical tool, But if you're persevering with all your might, rowing incredibly hard towards the wrong shore.
You've just wasted a massive amount of energy and time. Perseverance without a sound strategy backing it up is just, well, stubbornness on that sinking boat we talked about.
Precisely. And that brings us neatly to what Simon Sinek calls the ultimate strategic test. He asks, our greatest test is what we do with success once we find it.
Wow. Okay, so we can spend years, decades, mastering all the tactics needed to achieve some goal, climb the ladder, build a business, whatever it is.
But if we haven't strategically planned for the outcome, if we haven't really defined what that success is for, what it means in the context of our larger life strategy,
We might achieve it and find it feels hollow. We win the race, but realize we never actually wanted to be in that particular competition in the first place. The achievement itself becomes the failure if the strategy wasn't sound.
that's the risk, a failure to plan strategically for success itself.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We've established that it's easy to get trapped in that tactical urgency, just focusing on getting through the day 295 of 365, as you said. The way out, the sources suggest, is through deliberate strategic reflection, stepping back from the immediate details to see the whole system.
Right. So before you dive headfirst into tomorrow's tactics, tomorrow's to-do list, maybe take just a moment. Find that quiet space we talked about. Engage that strategic part of your mind. And ask yourself some of the core questions that emerge from our sources.
First, am I actually in the right race here? Did I consciously choose this path, this boat, or did I just sort of drift into it based on circumstances, expectations, or defaults?
And second, that honesty piece. Am I genuinely practicing what I preach? Or am I maybe preaching the values I'm actually afraid to put into practice? Look closely at your small daily tactics. What strategic confessions are they making about what truly drives you?
Because ultimately, life seems to reward choosing the right game, the right strategy, far more generously than it rewards playing the wrong game perfectly with brilliant tactics.
Choose your boat wisely. Choose your race deliberately. And always remember that quiet wisdom from Anne Frank. Paper is more patient than people. Use the time that patience offers you. Use it to consciously, deliberately choose your strategy.
Great advice. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.